Okay, so this is our group presentation on the subdisciplines within sports coaching and sport and exercise science. I'm Andy.
I'm Aidan.
And I'm Meg.
Okay, so the objectives for this presentation start off with explaining the differences and similarities between sports science and multi- and interdisciplinary approaches.
Individually, we have to present a case study based on our own work and experiences, so we all chose our own sports, which we think we're passionate about.
Later on we're going to discuss an action plan which involves the multi- and interdisciplinary approaches from our own experiences and case studies.
So just to introduce the definition, according to Bernard and Anita in 2006, they described the multidisciplinary approach to be quite simply an approach that involves multidisciplines all within the same team, so all working under the same roof but working in separate areas.
Multidisciplinary teamwork can be considered conducive when solving complex problems, however it's not necessarily needed for every single project.
The interdisciplinary approach is when groups of professionals link their work across different boundaries to provide the best possible support they can for a team or the team they work with.
So to start off with, I'm doing my presentation mainly about cricket. I've been working with Somerset County Cricket Club over the last month or so, and things I've noticed are that they do use the multidisciplinary approach to improve performance, and to do that they have three positions right at the very top that sort of lead everything. So they've got the director of cricket, the captain, the club captain and the head coach. Those three work together very, very closely in organising and working with the rest of the team. This includes a skills coach, performance analysis, strength and conditioning, physiotherapist, part-time psychologist and the groundsman. Now I put the groundsman in there as well because the groundsman has a really, really vital role to play in performance when it comes to cricket. Depending on what pitch they create depends on the type of team that they might put out for their league matches and cup matches. Also, you can notice here that I've separated it into multidisciplinary and three interdisciplinary sections. Now, these are the most basic ones that I could highlight. There are probably more within that, but the other two that I haven't mentioned are the captain through down to the performance analysis. Now, these guys work very closely together with deciding how they're going to go about their team and how they can improve performance. I mainly worked when I did my work placement with the performance analyst, strength and conditioning coach and physiotherapist. Now this was through doing testing and strength and conditioning testing on the players, also using GPS to monitor players' performance. These guys work in an environment that is very open-planned, a very open-planned office space, so they could use just different communication methods such as chit-chat and just talking to each other through the office. They also have a WhatsApp group, so they can communicate through the WhatsApp group, and they also use emails to communicate with each other. Now, to compare this to an amateur cricket club such as Cleveland Cricket Club, they, as you can see, have a much smaller amount of people working in their multidisciplinary environment. So the three that I've highlighted here as interdisciplinary, the cricket chairman, the head coach and the captain, they work very closely together, very similar to the three that I mentioned in the Somerset setup, whereas they also use an external masseuse using as like a therapist to get rid of those like muscle strains and sprains and things like that. But they all work together to improve performance of amateur players. In terms of communication methods, they meet every Tuesday, apart from the masseuse. They don't meet the masseuse, they only come on Saturdays. But the three that I've mentioned, the chairman, head coach and captain, they meet on Tuesdays to discuss what the team is going to be doing for the next week. There's also a WhatsApp group chat that these three are involved in, as well as all the players, so they can communicate clearly with all the players as well. So the differences that we can identify between the two: Somerset Cricket Club have a much larger budget than Cleveland Cricket Club, just thus due to they get lots of funding from the ECB, which is the governing body, and that sort of thing. They also have state-of-the-art facilities, whereas Cleveland Cricket Club have very limited facilities. Somerset also have full-time athletes, which makes it a lot easier to have more contact time and work with them. So all the people that I mentioned that first slide for Somerset, they have a lot more opportunities to work with full-time athletes, whereas at the Cleveland Cricket Club, there's a limited amount of time they can use. The backroom staff are full-time and very highly qualified. A lot of them have degrees and some of them have master degrees, whereas at Cleveland Cricket Club they are either part-time or voluntary coaches, which means they're not necessarily highly skilled, highly qualified. If I was going to put in an action plan to improve Cleveland Cricket Club, to try and get closer to Somerset, firstly we probably need to increase the funds, so there'd be some sort of way to increase funding. At the moment they use the bar to make a lot less funds, but other work could be done to increase the amount of money they have. Also, they can employ a full-time head coach who could take on a role to look at everything as a whole, and maybe employ some other coaches such as a strength and conditioning coach and a physiotherapist, for example. And they also could improve their facilities, so they could have an indoor net facility which includes a gym, which will take into account other disciplines rather than just the skills-based stuff. So that would be my action plan for cricket.
Over to rugby. As you can see here, I've done mine on the same side, so you can see the differences here. Now, for an elite rugby team, I've put down England, but from my own experiences, I played at Taunton Titans and they had a very similar setup to this. As you can see at the top, we have the director of rugby, so he's in charge of all the staff, who's hired, who's fired, and so forth. Then you have the head coach, who's in charge of the training drills, what training they're doing, he's in charge of picking the team. And then you have the assistants coach, forwards coach and backs coach. They all carry out the training sessions that their head coaches set up. Obviously, the backs coach works solely with the backs, the forwards coach works solely with the forwards. As you see as well, skills specialist, fitness coach, strength and conditioning, performance analysis. These all work very closely together to make sure that they're getting the best out of the players, and they also all link back to the head coach to let him know who's performing well, who isn't performing well. And then just underneath that here, you have the doctor, nutritionist, physiotherapist and psychologist. All these are to make sure that players are fit and healthy to play, and all these again feed back to the head coach to let him or her know that the players are fit. Some of these might also link with some of the other coaches, just so that the other coaches might know a player might not perform as well just because he's coming back from injury, so to look out for that. Now on the other side, on the amateur side, this is a team I've again played for and I've done a bit of coaching with over the years. All we genuinely have is a coach, an assistant coach and a physiotherapist. Now, so these are all part-time, some volunteers, but in each profession on both sides, they all work within their respected areas, but they do communicate with each other. So moving on to the next slide, here I'm talking about communication between the professions and limitations that may occur. So in an amateur environment, the coaches and physiotherapists can discuss players and tactics quite easily during a training session, especially in the senior level of the club, because the players are old enough to, once the training session is set up, take care of themselves. The coaches can step to one side and discuss what they need to discuss. They also do discuss situations through email and WhatsApp group chats throughout the week. However, this isn't an efficient way because, like I mentioned before, they're all part-time or volunteers. They have other jobs that are at the top of their priority list. So emails might not be seen, messages might not be seen, things could be missed. So this could lead to the players, the team not getting 100% out of the coaches and physiotherapists at the time. On the other hand, for an elite team, there is a high number of professionals, so it is difficult to just have that discussion over a training session. You might have the coaches being able to discuss over a training session, but overall they won't be able to speak to everyone as a whole. So in this situation, they set up meetings with the whole staff to go through players' need, if any players need to be rested, if any players are back fit enough to play. They also contact via email. Now, it's easier for an elite setup to just discuss via email or WhatsApp group chats because they're working full time for the club, they're getting paid by the club. They can give 100% focus to the team, meaning that the team as a whole benefit. That's that for me. So for my action plan to improve my amateur club would to be try and get more funding for the coaches so that they are able to take time off work, possibly go full time as a coach, to give more back to the players and the rest of the team in hopes of improving them overall.
Right, for my sport, I chose to do rock climbing. It's a lot different to just your standard sport. I chose my amateur rock climbing club. It's just the Taunton Club. So with the Taunton Rock Climbing Club, they have their coach, their assistant coach, their rock expert and their physiotherapist. Pretty basic to your Olympic standard rock climbing club. So I chose a specific person for my rock climbing Olympic standard, so I chose Shauna Coxey. She's actually a really good Olympic rock climber. Rock climbing as a sport isn't promoted as much as cricket or rugby, so it's not actually very well known. There's not very many clubs. But with an Olympic standard climbing club, you're going to have your coach, your assistant coach, your physiotherapist, your nutritionist, your rock expert. Oops. Thank you. Your personal trainer, strength and conditioning coach. And unlike other sports, there's two on this list that you're not really going to have in any other sports. So that's your British mountaineering expert and your rock expert. If you didn't have these in Olympic standard coaching club, then that's probably not great. To have a rock expert is great because when you go out climbing, you're going to need to know what kind of rock you're climbing, because if you're going to go climb a mountain and it's chalk, that's very highly dangerous for an athlete. And then also British mountaineering expert, so you know what areas you can go train at, and then your coach, a coach is keeping the athlete safe. Psychologically, rock climbing is very, very high in that area, because obviously you're going at very high heights, and that's quite a big area in rock climbing. And then here, rock climbing is different to a usual sport. For example, rock climbing in Olympic standards, you have to think more outside the box. It's not only the athlete that the coach has to think about, the coach has to communicate with lots of different people between, so that they can coach in different places. So for example, when a coach is going to train somewhere, they have to go through maybe the rock expert and the British mountaineering experts to make sure that that area that they're training in is safe for the athlete. So the athlete can climb, so like speaking to the mountain expert to make sure that it's legal, also that it's legal to climb in that area. In other areas such as strength and conditioning, nutritionist and personal trainer also all have to communicate with each other, whether that is face-to-face or in meetings or over email. All these roles have to speak to each other in order for the athlete to progress. Rock climbing is different to other sports because there's a lot more technical things that go into rock climbing. And also rock climbing could be debatable, but rock climbing is actually a very highly dangerous sport. On the other hand, it can also be like other sports where it has health side of things. For example, you have your strength and conditioning coaches, your personal trainers. You still have to be healthy and fit to be able to do the rock climbing. What I would say about rock climbing is it's not very well promoted. That's what I would change about it. I would make it more out there. It's not a very common sport. It's in the Olympics, but it's not very well known. As of 2018, the Olympics have actually hired up the funding for rock climbing. So it is becoming better and it's coming more into the general sporting area.
So, as a conclusion, for the team sports, one of the big differences between cricket and rugby is the person in charge. Now, with rugby, the person in charge is the rugby manager, the head coach, and possibly assistant coach. In cricket, it is primarily the captain who runs the team, who picks the team, rather than the coach doing that. So like I said, at the end of the day, that's probably one of the biggest differences between the setup with cricket and rugby.
The similarities between the two could be that there are integrated parts of their multidisciplinary approach as well as as being separate. So, for example, Aidan mentioned about in rugby, there's the skills coaches. It's very similar to cricket. There's the skill coaches who are all very integrated together, as well as the analysts that they work together with the head coach. Aidan was saying about similar with rugby. So there are parts of both setups that work integrated together, as well as working quite on their own as well.
I would say rock climbing, comparing it to other sports, the coaching side is quite similar, but obviously other than the coaching you have to think outside, so they have to speak to other people like they're, again, rock experts and British mountaineering, so they have to get quite a lot of people outside of coaching involved with it, even if that's like strength and conditioning and personal training and just like nutritionists and stuff. That's different to having to speak to somebody who's British mountaineering and a rock expert. So there's a lot more technical things that go into sports of rock climbing.
These are a few of the references that we used for this presentation, and we'd like to offer any questions to the board.
I wasn't aware that rock climbing was an Olympic sport. You mentioned it's not well promoted. Have you any ideas why that might be? It's not such a popular sport in the UK.
I don't think, like, it's not a very big sport. Like, people don't see it as a sport, I guess.
Maybe it's like prize money or...
Yeah, again, I think more people are trying to get involved now because since February 2018 they've actually hired the funding for it. So there must be something happening, there must be more promoting coming out.
Thank you.